And that's how I got here today. Yeah, I'm still lost. What do you need me for? I need you to make this. But a replica. I need you to make a perfect replica of this so that I can take it, ploop on back, and replace this with it and not set off the booby traps. But if you already escaped, why do you need to ploop back at all? Duh. I don't want the nonlinear poacher the mad scientist hired to know I got there first. I'm pretty sure I fell off the mad scientist grid last winter, and now it's my turn to strike back. But discreetly. And the nonlinear poacher was after some elephants? Not just any old elephants, time elephants. It's a very distinct difference. What differences exactly? Duh, the prefix time. Plus, you know, they have, quantum tusks. Need I say more? So, just like real elephants then, they're hunted for their ivory and are now endangered. Quantum ivory? Get these things right! And, no, they're actually not endangered. They're actually incredibly dangerous. Nearly impossible to kill. Unless you have certain artifacts. Uh-huh. Yeah. Wait, you're not gonna kill one, are you? What? No, the poacher wants to kill one. Let's just say that I'm taking some Nick Cage from National Treasure approaches to stopping him. Yeah, that just makes it sound like you're gonna kill one before he can. The time elephants are not the Declaration of Independence, that is. So you're saying there's a hidden map on this thing? Stop asking stupid questions and get to work. You get to say stupid stuff all the time. Why can't I have some fun? I came back to wish you good luck, but now I'm not going to. Whoops. Greetings, I'm Emmett, and today I'm going to be making a replica of the mysterious artifact known as the corn knife. It's a funky machete. I guess you could say it's kind of the executioner's sword of the machete family. A lot of choppy and no stabby. I've done realism stuff before. I mean, technically, everything I do is supposed to be realistic, but most of the time it's based on fantasy, which doesn't actually equate to anything real. But this is the first time where I've actually gotten to hold and inspect an object that I am actually copying one-to-one. I'm not just copying the idea of a prop, I'm actually replicating this specific object. And I like that. I have all the details I need right here, I know exactly what to do, just need to get it done. When I made this sword, I glued together a bunch of popsicle sticks and covered them in several layers of cardstock using contact cement. That's a bit of overkill, and especially like doing a sword this big, I had to put on a lot of cardstock to make it wobbly, so that didn't really help me with my goal of making it thin. It's not a bad method, though. The sword did work out pretty well. But to try and remove unnecessary complications, I'm gonna go ahead and just use a plank of wood. I had this specially made by my papa. It's basically exactly the right size for what I need. I'm probably gonna use some kind of foam for the handle, but since that's later on down the road, I'll go ahead and get to work on the blade. So I used a saber saw out at the shop to cut out the shape of it. Then I cleaned up the edges with the Dremel. Now I'm going to really dial in the surface and the edge and stuff like that by hand sanding it. There's a little blemish on the top. I used the very edge of a sanding drum to kind of carve that notch in it, and then I sanded everything around it to hopefully make it look like it got smashed and expanded like that, like squished out. It turned out pretty well. Like, you can still tell that it's more like I carved a little divot in there to form that ridge, which isn't how this looks because it's completely flat until it hits that ridge. But I still think it looks good. So for the handle, I cut out a little wood chunk as like the base and the space. It's a spacer, it'll hold it out a little bit. The thickness matches. Then I carved out some EVA foam sides using floor mat foam and dremeled them into the right shape. There's a lot of dremeling going on in this project. I wasn't too precise with this because I also wanted to cover it in foam clay. Now previously I had been complaining a little bit that foam clay is always squishier than I'm expecting it to be. I think that's just because I am impatient and try to paint it too early. Because some of the projects that I made like months ago and now they've had that much time to set have gotten like as hard as a rock. I'm just gonna have to be as patient as I can. Try to wait this out. So that's why I went ahead and started on the handle. And I just need to wait for that to dry so that I can actually work with it. But in the meantime, I can get the blade all finished up. I put on a layer of contact cement. I'm not sure what exactly this did, but I was hoping it would, I guess, either give it a better finish or make the foam slightly durable because it has glue soaked into it. But after that, I began to stipple on multiple layers of layers of Mod Podge. The actual blade has kind of this rough, kind of beaten, rustic metal look. By stippling on Mod Podge so that there's a bunch of little lumps all across the blade, and then sanding those lumps down so that there's more of like a flat surface with a lot of divots, that should give me basically the same texture as the real blade. So here I have spray painted the blade silver and smudged it with black. I'm hoping that the texture of the blade being a slightly different pattern when you look at it really up close won't be that big of a deal since it still like feels the same level of roughness. Now it's just gonna be a lot of weathering. So that's already looking pretty nice. I think I'm actually gonna go ahead and seal this just so it creates a little more of a contrast between the like shiny black metal and the crusty dirt. So now with this lighter color of orange, I'm actually going to go in and try to like map out where some of the main splooges are gonna be. Most of this will probably be covered up and reapplied, but I just want to know what I'm doing for the later layers. I'm just basically trying to like get the edge of the pattern down. I wanted to see if I could bring back some of the shiny black, just like how there's an interesting contrast between the reflective black metal kind of on the edge and the tip, and then the dirt that's smudged on top of it. So I was gonna try out some rubbing alcohol with some Q-tips, just to see if that would kind of bring out the shine a little bit. Clean up the surface, basically. That's all I'm doing, just fine-tuning some of the areas that got kind of over-dirtied. I don't know how visible that is on the camera, but I do think that it's helping to make it look a little shinier, so I'm probably going to mostly just like go over some of the edges, because weathering really helps make stuff look like metal, because shiny metal is hard to pull off just with paint. But if it's like rough and dirty weathered metal, then that makes any shiny parts like stand out more, and it looks more like actual highlights. I'm actually really liking kind of how that is turning out, because I realized that if I do this carefully enough, I can actually kind of shape the rust marks. If I dab the rubbing alcohol onto the places that I want removed and then just kind of rub them a little bit with the rag, that ends up creating a lot more of like a shaped rust pattern. And that way I can actually match the rust stains more precisely than I had been able to with regular paintbrushes. I don't know how hard on myself to be, because in terms of rusty knives, this definitely looks like a rusty knife. But does it look like this rusty knife? I think this side looks better. This side is a little smudgy. But for me, knowing when to stop painting is usually just a process of not knowing what else to do. And I'm not sure what else to do. I know. I can work on the handle. It's been dry. It's been sitting there for like a couple days. So I think it's dry enough to sand down. I tested it out by sanding like kind of the basic shape, but it still needs to be like actually shaped. So this is just kind of confirming how impatient of a person I am, as if there was any doubt in the first place. Yeah, I've got it pretty much where it needs to be. It's just a little bit thicker, but I might have to live with that because the whole thing is thicker. The blade is thicker. That's just kind of what you need to do with a prop because the material isn't as strong. I told myself I was going to like let it sit for a whole week and dry. If I was going to do that, I should have done that like before anything else. Like before I even started filming, I should have made this, let it sit, and then did everything with the blade after that. I didn't do that. I let it sit for like a couple of days, and then I wanted to work on it. So I Dremeled it and then got to some squishy stuff. So I let that dry for another day, and then I sanded that down and got to some squishy stuff, and then let that sit for a day, and here we are. I did utilize a hair dryer. That works with paint. It speeds up the drying for the impatient. I'm pretty sure it just dries the surface, but while it is still a little squishy, it might be good to add the grain. There's not much real grain on this, like in terms of how it feels. There's just a bunch of little divots and marks, as well as some damage, like this tip of the butt is kind of splintering a little bit. My plan is just to take like either knives or toothpicks or other pokey things and just like poke the holes into it. So that's all I can do right now. I'm gonna need to let this dry for probably another day is all I'm gonna be able to survive. But yeah. Putting the blade on there, it's definitely turning out well. So I gave it another day, and then my impatience deemed it ready to paint. Normally my default is covering it in Mod Podge, but I didn't feel like sanding down brushstrokes, so I went with Plastidip. I spray painted red, orange, and yellow spray paints to build up the base coat. And then I did a lot of dark washes and splotches and dry brushing and things like that. I did find out that I think washes are better than dry brushing, for wood at least. Mostly because they're subtler, and dry brushing mostly works when there's a good texture for the paint to catch. And this has no texture. And yeah, I don't know if this is gonna sound like a humorous running gag or a tired, broken record, but I make painting way too complicated. I need to figure out a simpler way of doing things. This was kind of nerve-wracking. I did a lot of different washes and different splotches. But yeah, like, dry brushing just made it look too crusty. Washes just looked smudgy. It didn't look like wood grain. I don't think I should have carved more of a wood grain into it. I didn't want it to look like it had an obvious wood grain because the handle doesn't, but I needed something to work with. Okay, so yeah, after a long time of painting, I ended up deciding that since I didn't really like what I had, I was fine sacrificing it for the sake of experimentation, and I scrubbed it with rubbing alcohol to wipe off most of the paint. And then I just did that whole process over and over again. Hey there, pal. I thought I'd check in and see how... Whoa. Thanks. And, sorry. Hey, don't mention it. I'm just glad to be on the other side of the intervention for a change. So what's the matter? Well, the blade was fun to do, but the handle is kind of kicking me in the butt. For one thing, I probably should have let the clay dry for a full week, just to be safe. I don't know that it would have helped, but I know squishiness isn't. As for the painting, you see, this is smooth. And it's hard enough to paint wood when there's woody texture for the paint to really sink into. I don't know. Maybe you gave me this mission too early. The whole time, half of me was like, yay, realism, that's a fun challenge. And then the other half of me was like, yeah, but that involves a lot of painting. And you're not that good at painting. You're absolutely right. I should have waited for your skills to develop. What is this, 2021? I'll come back in 2031. Wait. No. 2030. That's a good year. It's settled. Or maybe 10 years isn't even long enough. What do you need? 20? 30? Do you want me to come back when you're old and gray? Okay. I want to finish the project, okay? I bit off so much, it's gonna take me a while to chew. Let me tell you a story. When I was younger, but not you, I had to do some homework. But I didn't want to do it, so I time traveled to the future to have my older self do it. But lo and behold, he didn't do it. Is this you or Calvin and Hobbes? So do you have the handle? Yeah. And this was an example of you not being good at painting? Well, yeah, I mean, the end product looks good, but it's really hard to get there. Well, that doesn't matter. The end always justifies the means. At least, in this situation. Well, I'm still having fun, and that's what's most important. Exactly. And hey, it could be worse. You could be hunted by the villagers you sought to protect because they mistook your valiant Nick Cagiana Jones efforts for Shifty Tomb Raiding, and now have cursed you with sugar water. Sugar water? It attracts time flies. Well, that's my cue. So it does actually feel a little bit like I got drunk, even though I don't actually know what it's like to be drunk. What I mean is, I know I did things, but I just kind of woke up with a headache and a foggy recollection, and the only thing I know for sure is that I used a toothpick to dab on all the grain markings, because nothing else was really working. I am going to try and do a little bit more with kind of the barky grain nature of it, just to fix the color a little bit more. All it needs is a little bit of detail. Like, all of the stuff I need to do is more just like the surface layer details. Like, there's some marks. That's the main thing I'm going to be concentrating. There's some places where it's got marks and nicks and cuts, and that's like lighter, more like scraped off bits of wood. So I'm hoping if I add those details and then kind of with that lighter color just touch things up a bit, then that will hopefully bring it just that little extra step it needs. I'm going to do some of the weathering after I get the tape on, because the tape has like grease and dirt on it too. So once I get it all done, I get the blade attached to the handle, wrapped in tape and yada yada. I will add one final round of weathering to make it all look cohesive. So I think that is painted about as good as I can paint it, which means now it's time to glue the blade. Where'd the blade go? This could be a little tricky to sit in here. I'm not letting the glue dry completely, so that I can actually, hopefully, wiggle it down in there. But not letting the glue dry completely means that I'll have to wait and let it dry. Oh, shoot. That's not good. Oh, well, I can fix that. A drip of the contact cement got on the outside, and it actually kind of dissolved some of the paint, so now there's this little splooge there, but that could be fixable. But anyway, while I wait for that to dry, they're little bolts. Most of them are covered up by the tape, so I basically just need something to glue on that would represent bolts bulging out from under there. But then one of them is actually visible. What I have here are some actual screws and bolt heads and that type of things. Like I said, most of them are covered up, but I felt like using real ones was still easier than trying to make some sort of foam or cardboard equivalent. So I'm either going to, like, some of them are just like I have like little nut or screw heads or stuff like that. Some of them I might just glue on there, or to get them the right size, I kind of bulk them up with the hot glue gun. But some of them I might actually screw in. And like this one, I actually found a nail that was the right size as the nut, so I'm actually going to try and nail it in. Hopefully it won't damage the foam. Now the tape is a situation where I know I'm not going to be able to get it exact. But just as long as it has the right look, that's all that matters. There is a bit of a wiggle there with where the blade meets the rest of the handle. And that's like right where you would be holding on to, so that's probably going to be getting a lot of wear and tear right there. Here I'm using the Mod Podge to take off the adhesive and kind of lay down some texturing for some dirt and scratches and stuff like that.
Ha!
Yeah! Hey there, pal. Well, the good news is, this is the fake. The bad news is, I can tell. We'll take a step back. Back. Aha! Now look at it. Oh, now that looks pretty real. Whoa, now not so much. Hey, 5-foot rule, you step the heck back. 5-foot rule, my time-traveling keister. I'm the one who hired you to make that thing. I also want to hang on to the real one. Even if I'm not hunting the elephants, you never know when you might want to cut through some quantum ivory. So, what now? Well, for me, I'm off to do more adventuring. Ah, don't! Why, for the love of God, did you just snap a rubber snake at me? This was the only thing I could find that would make the right sound. Plus, I wasn't aiming for you. Rubber snakes just do what they want. Okay. Oh, that's it? Huh. I survived. That's the clock that ticks. Sometimes at night I can hear a clock ticking and I can't figure out what clock it would be. We did get a new clock over there. I don't know if that picks up or not. This thing smells funny. It's been sitting in the back of a greasy truck for years. The end product usually looks good, but it takes a lot of work to get there. Comfort me, Flopsy. Yeah. Hey, 5-foot rule, you step the heck back. Hey, 5-foot rule, you step the heck back. Hey, 5-foot rule.